welcome to Bring on the Sabbath.
Welcome and happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
The Sabbath has started in some places around the world. It hasn't quite got here yet. We're bringing it on.
Bringing it on.
That's true.
It starts at 7:43 p.m. In East Texas. So we're at some point we're going to enter into the Sabbath day, and also we're going to enter into what are we going to enter to? The new year.
The new year.
The new year.
Nissan 1 or
That's
Aviv
right.
1.
The new biblical year. So happy biblical new year we will be entering into as well. And we have 13 days until Passover.
It's coming up, man.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed that Kelly McDonald is here with us tonight.
Look at this guy.
Bible Sabbath Association.
Just decided to drop in.
Yeah, he was with us during Winter Family Weekend.
That's right.
Only had a few minutes then, but we got the whole time here with Kelly today.
I know.
Thank you guys for having me on. It's really an honor.
We're excited
and
to
so
have you.
you're with the Bible Sabbath Association, the president.
That's right.
And also you were telling me that you also have a local church that you're part of. What is that?
Yeah. Well, I'm a member at Hungry Hearts Ministries.
Okay.
Our home church is in Jackson, Tennessee, but we have satellite locations in Corinth, Mississippi, Cleveland, Tennessee, Athens, Georgia, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and Cookeville, Tennessee. So,
Wonderful.
Wow.
So y'all you're doing a lot.
Awesome.
yes, we're doing quite a bit.
All right. Well, it's good to hear that. So you got the Tennessee covered.
We got Tennessee covered, almost from one end to the other, literally. So.
All right. So there's people out there looking for a church. That's probably a good option, I would guess.
Absolutely. You can contact Hungry Hearts or contact the Bible Sabbath Association if you're out there and you want somewhere where you can attend on Sabbath and you can have that face-to-face contact with people of a like mind and similar belief. The BSA, we will give you a list of every Sabbath church that we can find in that area and let you choose from what you would like to attend. So
You recommend CGI in areas too, don't you?
absolutely.
All right, good.
100%. We love CGI. Great people.
That's awesome.
Good to hear that.
That is so awesome.
And right now I am sharing on Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook, we ask you to share
Please share.
and share often and
Yes.
like and do all those good things.
How did we get our YouTube?
Yeah, our
stuff
YouTube is
worked
now
out?
working. So thanks to
Okay,
Wesley
awesome.
Worthen, who's behind the camera right now. We want to thank him for working hard to get that up and running. We had, we bought some more equipment because we had some technical, legal things between Facebook. I don't want to go into all that, but we got some new equipment.
Well-
Wesley got it working, and we're on there. So
It's
hello.
good to hear that someone was here holding the fort down while we were out traveling and doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, I was out of town for last,
Right.
for a week, but I was back last week.
I was out for 2 weeks.
Yeah, you were doing something
So-
really fun. You're going to talk about later.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
something
can't wait
really
to tell you about the women's retreat.
looked like a lot of fun.
Oh, we had a blast, and it was so awesome. I mean, I came back with such a peace in my heart. It was so blessed, and if you're out there watching and you were there, thank you for being there. I mean, I just can't wait until next year.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, something you experience and you say, "Hey, I want to experience that again," and you're willing to, have that anticipation for a whole year. It must be very special. So that's
Yeah, kind of like it's almost equivalent to the feast.
wow.
Wow,
That's
so
pretty
Not-
powerful.
Not quite. I mean, it's not something that God set aside for us, but
Sure.
I mean, it was just a really cool experience. And I mean,
Wonderful.
I think everyone had a great
Yeah,
time.
from what I've heard from the ladies who were there, they really thought it was great. It was just they really thought it was excellent.
I hope more of you out there can actually make it next time.
Yeah, well, and hopefully things will work out. I guess the word of mouth will get out there. And so now, if you're planning on doing it next year, we don't have a date yet,
No.
but start getting ready in your mindset to be a
But
part
I
of
would
it.
like to hear from some of you tonight as to when the best time of year is for you, so that hopefully we can make this a little bit easier on people that maybe there's a better time for traveling. I know that it would have been a whole lot easier for me if it had been after the school year because I'm a teacher.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it was a couple of weeks after my spring break, but it was still it was a little bit overwhelming with my schedule.
Yeah.
But it was totally worth it. I'm not saying I would never do it again during that time because it was totally worth it.
Well, in Psalm 133, it says how blessed it is when the brethren come together and dwell together in unity. And so, we could also say how blessed it is when the sisters get together in
The
unity.
sister, and that's what I was going to
The
say.
sister. Oh, yeah, I said that at Winter Family Weekend, didn't I?
Yeah, very, very great, very great.
Well, it certainly was. It was certainly blessed. It was very blessed. Oh, well, and also remember to join us tomorrow for our webcast. Right here in Tyler, Texas, we're going to be live broadcasting at 11 a.m.
Back on YouTube.
Yeah, back on YouTube and every one of our many channels now. And we will have Kelly speaking tomorrow. What is your topic tomorrow?
So last time I was here, May of last year, we talked about the history of the Sabbath.
Right.
And we're going to continue that theme tomorrow. And last year I covered about almost 400 years of Sabbath history. Well, tomorrow what we're going to do is we're going to take about 100 years I went through, and we're going to go deeper into that 100 years, and we're going to specifically focus on Constantine and Theodosius. Those were two Roman emperors who had a tremendous impact on the Sabbath community long term. There's a lot of mythology out there about Constantine. We want to refute some of that tomorrow. I think it's very important that we as Sabbatarians know our own history, because there's a lot of fake news out there, Facebook posts being shared. I'll actually show you one tomorrow, a Facebook meme that's being shared by Sabbath keepers that has about 8 or 9 historical inaccuracies. Not one historical inaccuracy, because hey, anybody could have a bad day or make a mistake. We're talking about 8 or 9 historical inaccuracies. We're going to correct those things and set the record straight.
Well, that sounds very, very interesting.
I can't wait. I know I'm going to be there.
Yeah, very good. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it.
Also, we are having every week Adrian Davis's Bible study, the Gospel according to Isaiah, and we do have that available. You can actually, if you're late to the game to the Bible study, no worries. We have it available on YouTube. We have it available on our website and in our CGI Digital Network app,
Which I love.
and you can go there and you can watch it on your phone, tablet, television. If you have a Roku or Apple television, watch it on those great things. And we also, Skip Martin is doing a Bible study at 7 p.m. This is more of a direct interactive thing when he's doing on Go the Meeting. And so to be a part of that, send your request to bots@cgi.org, and I will forward that to Skip, and we'll keep adding people until they fill up, until he tells me to stop sending them people for his Bible study. So we want to do that and give you opportunity for those who really want to get some in-depth study of Paul and Acts and the things that he's doing, covering there. It'd be very interesting.
It seems like he told us there was a lot of room left, though.
Okay, a lot of room.
Wasn't it like 200, Skip? I know you're out there. Isn't it like 200 people? No, I'm kidding. I remember there was a cap somewhere, but I'm sure he'll voice that in a few minutes. He's out here on our church online. All right. Well, also we are back this week, and as promised, and we will be back with Bring on the Sabbath in 2 weeks. And we are going to have our guest, Mike James, at a special time, 5 p.m., because that is actually before the Not to Be Much Observed.
Yeah, so we're going to actually we're going to be talking about probably some Passover themes. We'll be bringing on the Not to Be Much Observed, talking about unleavened bread, which we didn't do our thing. We need to work on that.
We were supposed to do it tonight and have you taste test
Yeah.
our unleavened bread.
Oh, and see who wins?
Yeah, but we're so unorganized.
Yeah, we have been so busy. It's just been crazy.
Yeah.
We have to do
Instead,
that
we
one
had
year.
pizza before.
Yeah.
But if you want
we fed him leavening.
But if you need a good unleavened bread recipe, we have a recipe book that's online.
Yes.
You can find it online on our website, or you can request for it.
And also, ladies, if you're really wondering which ones are the best, I've tried and tested a bunch, and I have my favorites. If you'd like to know them, you can contact me at botslisa@cgi.org, and I can give you my favorites.
All right, there you go.
All right.
That's a great service you provide them.
Yeah.
All right,
I don't
very
mind.
good.
I'll email you real fast. I'm used to returning emails a lot. With my job, I have to do that a lot.
All right, so if we get 200 emails, send 200 requests to Lisa. She can answer your emails coming in.
It'll be fun.
Best recipes we have there. All right. Also, speaking of the app, and we'll put that slide up there.
Yes.
If you have not, have you downloaded the app yet?
I haven't downloaded it yet.
All right, I've told them that. Okay, so
You are gonna love it.
So the app, our CGI Digital Network app, you can
easy
download
and
it in
fun.
a few minutes. It's you go to the App Store. If you look up CGI Digital Network or look up Church of God International, you will find it. We have a link directly on our website, a page, cgi.org/app. You can get to it there. But in this app, we have Bible studies, we have sermons, we have
Bring on the
Bring on the Sabbath archives.
We have Armor of God.
Armor of God.
That's incredible.
We have a Bible reading app. I love that.
Bible
I
reading
use that
app.
all the
It will
time.
read it to you if you'd like.
Yeah,
You can
that's
listen to the Bible.
awesome.
So there's a lot of good things in that app. We're doing it as a resource to the church, and also we're using it as an evangelistic tool to take the gospel to the world. And we believe this is one of the ways we're going to do this. And the thing is, a lot of times we wish you could share something with someone. If you had a magazine, I have a magazine, I could share this magazine with someone, or share a booklet. Now you can just say, hey, why don't you download the CGI Digital Network app? I think Wesley back there has talked to quite a few people and got them, like in banks and different things. He tells me, he's like, yeah, I want you to download our app.
Oh, that's
And they're
awesome.
downloading the app.
Wow.
And so and again,
That's incredible.
And so just tell people, hey, download the app. There's some interesting things you may find a good part of that. And also now we just added this morning,
Awesome.
the Feast of Tabernacles videos for 3 years, for 2016, 2017, and 2018. You
For
can watch
3 sites, too.
for 3 different sites. So there's a lot of Feast of Tabernacles videos. So some more content. We're always adding content to this site. There's more. I mean, I think tell me if you can find another app other than Netflix that has as much content.
I've seen. Let me just say this real
True.
quick. I have seen the app. I've seen the TV as well.
Yeah, I showed them the TV.
It's impressive. Okay, I'm impressed. Literally, I'm blown away. I mean, I'm just like, wow. The amount of content, the ease of access. I mean, it's one thing to have content. It's another thing to have the ease of access to the content. And you guys have put both together, which I think is a tremendous combination.
And there's articles that we're having, and we got about 20 articles right now. There's going to be 20 rotating articles. Again, that's aimed at hopefully for evangelism, for bringing people to God's truth. All right, one other thing special I want to let you know. I'm going to let y'all know, to everyone out there, a little special thing. We have a program that we're making exclusive to the app, and that program is, I think we have a slide for it, Abortion, the Hidden Details. So Abortion, the Hidden Details is a Armor of God program, and this has Bill Watson, Adrian Davis, Wayne Hendricks, Tony Booker, all together discussing abortion and what it means, the hidden details, how terrible it is, and there's some footage from Congress and different things that goes into detail of what happens and all, and it's very, very, very well done. And so I recommend that's something you can share with someone. So hey, get this app and watch this video about abortion. Again, if you're somebody on the edge, they don't quite know why they should be against abortion or what the controversy is and why this is something you can share with someone about abortion. Abortion, the Hidden Details, only in the app right now. So and the reason we're doing that, I'll tell you the reason we do that, because we want you to download the app. Now we will make it available on other platforms later, but right now, on the app, you can watch it today.
It's amazing all the stuff that's now coming out about abortion, and I mean, I don't know if y'all have heard about that movie that has just come out and planned.
I would like to see that.
I've heard of it.
And we actually talked about doing that after PEP tomorrow.
We might
Did we
be able
talk
to do
about
that.
that?
We might could do that.
I'm sorry if we didn't talk about that.
We might could do that.
But I'm excited to see that. I know that the Wilsons actually saw it last weekend and loved it.
All right.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I think that, God's just like really putting it on the people's hearts to really hit it hard, like the blood of those children is just calling out to him.
It's murder.
It is.
It is murder.
It really is.
100%.
And we need a change of hearts. We need the people to realize that that we have the worst human rights issue ever is occurring in our country. And so
Very
there's humans
sad.
who are being deprived of their right to live.
The right to live, and it's not, and it's so bad in God's sight on multiple levels, and one of which is not just did that child die, but all the children that would come from that child. I mean, you got to think it's a chain effect, and so it's terrible.
It really is.
Yeah, so check that out. You can do it now if you want to, but we say hang around a little bit. We got some good things planned tonight. But before we go,
commercial. No.
before we go, I'll read a few comments. I got a few here on Facebook. I'm gonna start with YouTube, I think, because we have a Mimi on YouTube. It looks like so. Hello, the Mimi out there.
What's up, Mimi?
And we got starting here on the Facebook. My dad is watching, of course. Hello, Dad.
Mr. Reed.
Amy
What's
Ho Hertz, probably double or triple dipping, I'm sure. And Jeff
haven't seen her
Steele,
over here yet.
Jeff Steele, who was there. If you met Jeff Steele at the Winter Family Weekend, I looked out and he was like right there in front of me.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and like,
Yeah, he was
I could
right
see
in
Jeff
front of us.
Steele instead of
was right out
and then
front.
I saw him
He was like-
make comments as well.
He's one of our
Yeah, he's,
biggest supporters.
yeah, so he says peace and love from South Carolina.
watches a
So,
lot.
so peace and love back to South Carolina. And Willow Love Al says happy Sabbath from Columbia. We got Holly Flores, who was with you at the
Yes,
this past
Holly
weekend
was-
there.
Yay,
My dad says
Holly.
hello from Trussville, Alabama. Blake Silverstein, who
hi,
we had
Blake.
lunch with today. Blake,
Blake,
the
what's
the
going
guy
on?
at the
I hope he's only listening. He's
at
on his way
CM
back to Houston.
The CM guy. I can't call him the new guy anymore. But I can call him the CM guy.
guy.
The CM guy. The general manager, the CM there. Blake Silverstein is watching. Says hello, happy Sabbath. And,
Sorry, Blake.
Oh,
I'll stop apologizing when you stop calling him the new dude. It's the dude from CEM, not the guy.
yeah, and Holly says the retreat was so amazing. Can't wait till next time. So there's
Oh, awesome.
definitely a plug.
I've got
So many
good-
comments on
I got
here.
some
I
good
saw
stuff.
one. I saw one from and again, if I don't read your comment, no. Cassandra McDonald. Do you know that person?
Oh.
Because it's like your last name. Okay.
Must be related.
So you
There's
can
only
use,
a couple
you can use it on
McDonald's.
Fire
Yeah, I'm
Stick.
kidding.
They say a Fire Stick can play it. Okay, good.
Wow.
Okay, so
oh, that's
Fire Stick.
Amazon.
I think it's
That's the Amazon Fire Stick.
Okay, so
That's like a Roku kind of.
or she's asking if it's on Fire Stick. I don't
Oh.
think it's on Fire Stick, but
No.
you can
Oh, yeah.
stream it to like a Google, the Google Stick and stuff. And there's ways to do that. But if you have a Fire Stick, go
You
to
can
the
go to
YouTube app
YouTube.
and watch this
Yeah.
on the YouTube app. There, Joe Ferguson says Happy Sabbath.
Oh,
He's in
hey,
Alabama.
Hey,
Joe.
Joe.
Here we go. Christy Magsabal from the Manila, Philippines.
Wow.
So again, I always I'm looking for someone in the Philippines because I know they're about to go
The Philippines,
to their
man.
church church
Yeah.
service in a few hours because it's like early morning in the Philippines right now. And Blake wanted to make a comment that we're doing a viewing party for the Quality Church Retreat at CEM offices in White House on Saturday, May 4th. And so email him for details. So I'm gonna do a plug for him. And so what it is, Quality Church Retreat is we're going to be a part of that,
That's
and
right.
it's with Jim O'Brien, and we are presenting different things that can help local churches as far as evangelism, better churches, better music, all kinds of things that will help local churches.
That's right.
Now,
so-
you do know that Blake is also presenting something from here.
Yeah, he's going to present it from here, and we're going to watch him.
Yeah,
It's going to be like the
that's right.
opposite.
It's
So
gonna
Blake's
be-
presenting.
He said it's going to be like bots, but both ways.
Yeah, so both ways.
I'm excited because I'm going to actually be in that viewing audience with him.
Yeah, and so and
I'll
this
be
is the thing
there.
that's not going to be online. So there's a lot of people out there going to be, oh, where can we see it?
Right.
Only
You
if you're. In,
have
this
to
is
see
a
'em.
comment. If you're in Tyler, Texas, you can go to CEM and
Well,
and be a
Lighthouse
part of it as well.
technically, but
Yeah, we are.
close
Yeah,
to Tyler.
close enough. And Neil MacGyver is on here. Yeah,
Hi,
there's a
Neil.
lot of
Neil.
folks. All right, so hello again,
know.
Ed Labino in the Philippines. Hello
We
out
have
there.
a lot.
All right,
And
go.
I have
All right.
Christine and William One. Trina is on here from Cincinnati. Hi, Trina. She was at the retreat with us.
All right.
And Marian's Sister with Love in North Carolina is also on with Margie. And we also have, of course, Skip is on here. Trudy 51. Trudy, and everyone is just saying Happy Sabbath, brethren. How are you doing? Let's see. Someone had some good news about Margie says that, or Christine says Joey is doing better now. She was answering Margie because she had asked about someone, and the doctor took his collar off, so he's doing much better.
Okay.
People have been praying for him, and let's see. We also have Carl Night Tribe is on here. I haven't seen
Carl.
Amy. I haven't seen Amy over here, but I also have a new person over here named Just Me.
Just me.
Just me.
All right. Hello.
Say they're from Happy in Alabama,
All
loving
right.
the Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
Wonderful.
So that is awesome, loving the Sabbath. Rick 4 is on with us tonight. RJ, just everyone talking to each other. Oh, and here's someone from Tennessee, TC from Tennessee.
All right.
Is also on. Welcome. And he says blessings to you all. And he's from West Tennessee.
I'm from Jackson as
Jackson.
well.
Yeah. All right.
So, not sure who you are, Tennessee, or TC, but if you want to send your name, we can keep it under wraps if you want us to let Kelly know that you're on here.
All right.
Oh, no, we're not going to call him that, Skip. Sorry.
No.
He wants to call Blake the house broken into guy. I was so
goodness.
sorry to hear about that, Blake. I'm so sorry. And also, you guys, please be sure and pray for Blake.
Yeah, his house was broken into. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, and also just with the situation with his dad.
Oh yeah, and found out his dad.
So
is in
I'm sorry I
hospice.
didn't hear about that earlier tonight, Blake, from someone else, but I heard about that, and you're in our prayers. Your dad's certainly in our prayers.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's so neat to see this list just grow, and it's so awesome to have all of your fellowship with us. It's just so exciting.
All right. Well, we're going to get this. We'll get this
Yeah,
started here in
it
a
is.
moment. One more person I just want to mention because I saw they're from Rockwall, Texas. Where did I lose that? Rebecca
Rockwall.
Cottingham here in Rockwall, Texas. I've been in Texas for 6 years. I'm not. Where's Rockwall at?
Rockwall is north of Terrell and a little bit west or east of Dallas.
Okay. All right. Well, hello,
So
Rebecca.
it's like
Watson.
it's across the lake from Rowlett. You kind of have to go across the lake to the east side of Rowlett.
All right.
So yeah, it's on I-30
All
roughly.
right. Wonderful. All right. Well,
About
I'm anticipating to hear all the great things that happen at the women's retreat. So we're going to take a break,
We're going to talk about that next.
and when we get back, we're going to talk. We're going to let Lisa present and show us some pictures, and we're going to learn a little bit about what happened. So we'll take a short break.
The Church of God International would like to introduce the availability of a new app designed for your convenience. Download it now.
Hi, we'd like to offer you some free literature on today's program. We want to offer you, have the Old Testament dietary laws been abolished? Are the clean, unclean laws God gave to ancient Israel enforced today? Were they given to the Hebrews only, or did God give them for the benefit of all mankind? Get this pamphlet to learn more. We also want to offer you why we keep the law. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments. Matthew 19, verse 17. Please get both of these pamphlets and learn more about this interesting subject. To get both of these items, all you need to do is call toll-free 1-888-578-8791. That's 1-888-578-8791, or visit our website, www.cgi.org. That's www.cgi.org.
All right, we are
Yeah,
back.
Welcome back, everyone. And boy, do I have some news to report to you. Cozy Mountain Lodge Women's Retreat was such a success. And I brought some of my props with me. I'm going to show you. I'll probably do the close-up camera for these too. But here's a couple of things.
And what is that right there?
Every woman got this bag.
Whoa.
And it's just a little thing. It says, God is our refuge and strength, Psalm 46, verse 1, which was our main verse that we kind of tied into outside of the whole book of Ruth, because we went through the whole book of Ruth. And every woman got one of these. Inside, they received a Cozy Mountain Lodge participant guide. And this had all of the sessions and all of the exercises that we did throughout the whole conference or the retreat. And also inside this bag, they received a little kit where they built a lodge. This is my
Lincoln Lodge.
This is my personal lodge that I built. And I know Wesley can't really zoom in on it, but there is writing all over this. Each session we put together a different part, and I'm going to tell you about the sessions briefly in just a few minutes. But then we also received a pen. This is our little twig pen. I don't know if you can really see it very well, but it says it's kind of cut in, and it says redeemed. So the book of Ruth, it talks about the Redeemer, the kinsman Redeemer, Boaz. But we had so much fun, and the ladies there were just exciting, fun, and just a blessing to the whole retreat. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we did. We had 7 sessions where we all participated, and if the women just wanted to have private time, they could. It was very flexible. We did have a schedule, but we tried to not be real. We tried to be real flexible about the schedule, and there were some times that some of us didn't get there, until 5:10 after, and we started a little bit late. No big deal. And then there was one time that I had left every bit of my props that I needed for one of my sessions at the Holly House, but then we decided to move the whole session to one of our homes so it would be a little bit more intimate. So, we were just that flexible. But I want to start telling you about some of the sessions. And in session 1, we actually did our welcome, and we actually started building. And we had a sack of items to build a home with, and they were things like toothpicks, Legos, styrofoam cups, and playing cards. But those were a little bit funny houses that we built with those things. But we all learned that we were all building on the same foundation, because we all had tables that we were able to build on.
Wow.
So, the same foundation, we should all be able to be building on that in our personal lives. But we started building our cabin, the little cabin that I showed you, and we wrote our goals on the foundation piece. So it was a really great session, a great starter, and we did that on Friday night. Well, the next morning, we all talked about how when we get out into the woods and our cozy mountain lodges, we usually put away all the electronics and get out good old-fashioned board games. So we played good old-fashioned board games, but we played them with a twist. And what happens when you're uprooted from your game and have to pick up in someone else's game? That's exactly what we did. Now, it was a little confusing, but sometimes we are uprooted in life with changes so big that it's hard to overcome. So I think we all relied on each other in our groups to overcome the big change. So that was like the main lesson of session number 2. Then in session number 3, we heard a new and improved story of the 3 little pigs. We learned valuable life lessons about how we can't rely on beauty, money, or things that we love, which the things that that person in the story loved was chocolate. But also, at this point, we were relating the story of Ruth to our own lives, and we were realizing the tremendous love story that was written there about us as believers. And it was just so amazing, all of the things that correlate with the book of Ruth, and all the things that she went through, and all the things that we go through in our own lives. We just had a great time talking about that. So in session 4, a little bit later in the day on Saturday after lunch, we had a great time making soup. Now we had these cute little bags that we decorated, and they were created by the group. This was our service project, and it really aligned well with the special treatment that Boaz gave Ruth when he realized who she was. So he actually gave her the ability to go into the fields and actually harvest in a different way than just the beggars would. So he actually gave her this extra gift. So we made gifts of soup, and it was actually barley and bean soup.
So some pictures of that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have. Hey, Bob, can you find that picture? I guess you. I don't. It's the one that has Rebecca on the front. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's the one. So this was our bean soup making. So you can kind of see in the foreground there, one of the bags has number 624 through 26, I think. Mm-hmm. But we all either wrote scriptures or encouraging words, and we decorated with like washi tape, and we had little bean soup recipe cards that went into them, and it was really fun. And I mean, I think we had one lady who came in a little bit late, and she was like, "Oh, we're making soup to take home," and I was like, "No, actually, this is a service project," and she was just like, "Whoa, this is so awesome," because I don't think she realized that we were actually going to be doing a service project. So a little bit later, session 5, just right after our session 4, we had a little bit of a break, and this was by far one of my favorite sessions because when I first went through it and read it, I knew that my friend Sharon Wilson was really the right one to do this session for me. And this session helped us to understand the strange advice that Naomi gave to Ruth, where Naomi asked Ruth to go and lie on the floor at Boaz's feet and cover his feet. So we focused on the position that Boaz took as kinsman redeemer, and how we also received that same covering from Jesus Christ. And that's when we finished building our cabin. We actually put our roof on at that point for the covering, and it was all through the steps. It was just so amazing how we went through this little cabin and talking about the walls and just everything. It was amazing. But then finally in session 6, this was after dinner on Saturday night, and we explored our cozy mountain lodge and spent time in quiet prayer about 5 different aspects in our cabin. We went to the front porch, the front room, the dining room, the bedroom, and the hallway. And at the end of all of that, we shared our most meaningful thoughts. Now, I brought my actual lodge book, and the front porch was about God being our shepherd and us finding rest. We just said to sit on the front porch and just relax. And then in the hallway it says, our scripture was, "He renews my strength, He guides me along the right path, bringing honor to His name." Psalm 23:3. So we had little candles in each little session. We just had to focus and feel the warmth of the candle and see how much light and heat were actually produced by just this small flame. And I mean, it was really neat. And it was like focusing on the direction, where does our life need direction? How can we grow that flame inside us? And then in the bedroom, we had a real comfy spot. We were trying to get, well, we didn't have our pillows and blankets because we were actually using Amy's bedroom for this. We had the actual bedroom to use. But we thought about things from our childhood and how we cope with fears, because a lot of us, kind of like find our happy place in our bed, all snuggled up, and we can kind of like hide from things. But we thought about our fears, and then our verse was, "Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me." And of course, that's in Psalm 23 also. That's verse 4. The dining room, we said, "Welcome to the table." We had hot cocoa at the dining table. It was really yummy. And we talked about, these were things that we could reflect on how God blesses us. And then finally, the family room, we all sat around and we got our little necklaces. I'm wearing my necklace. It's a heart, and it's got 2 verses inscribed in it. And those 2 verses are actually on my scripture slide, Bob.
Which one?
The scripture slide. Oh, that's okay. So I know I'm going kind of breakneck speed through this, but
and make him earn his wages over there.
Yes. So these are the two verses, and they're just shortened, but one of them is Psalm 23:6. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And then one is Psalm 46:1, which I showed you on the bag, is God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Mm-hmm. So we actually we sat around and we shared our most meaningful thoughts of that session, and what we found the most meaningful, which of the 5 different stations in the house we found most meaningful. And it was just amazing to hear some of the stories that were going on. I didn't hear all of them because I kind of got caught in the bedroom with a friend, and we were just like discussing the fears and the different things that were on that session, and also from another session. It was really fun. But then finally, we that night we had karaoke, we had ice cream, we had chocolate, we had all sorts of fun. We had a lot of bonding moments throughout the whole retreat. And the next morning, we got up and we said our goodbyes. But we actually had a session. We couldn't say goodbye without leaving a welcome mat for each other. So we wrote words of encouragement to each other on tiny little Post-its. And I've got all my Post-its here. I put them in my book. And we walked around the room, and each one of these we stuck on someone else. And I said, in the actual book it said to stick it on their hair, stick it on their back, stick it somewhere on them. I had so many on my head. I think that was my kids that actually started that. But before we left, we decorated each other with love. And I mean, it was just amazing. I can't even broadcast everything that we did, but I do want to. This was called the Cozy Mountain Lodge Women's Retreat, the evaluations. So I have a few evaluations that I want to go through here. We had my evaluation was 3 questions, and the first one was, thank you for joining. Well, I thanked everyone for joining us. The very first one was, what did you love about Cozy Mountain Lodge? And I had responses such as meeting new people. And someone said, I loved our physical location, but I really loved the hands-on activities. The wooden cabin, the service project, that was in all caps, those helped drive it home. Then someone else wrote, the open-hearted love between attendees. That got me. I mean, it was so amazing. Sorry, Wesley, I didn't mean to tap my mic. But then also someone else said, getting to know everyone and growing closer to them through conversations and the activities. Now, another question that we had on that, this was actually the third question. I want to save the second question for last, because that was the chance for us to get all the negative feedback from it. But I mean, it was so amazing, some of the feedback we got. But the third question was, how did you grow closer to other women and to God at this retreat? Well, one woman said, I was able to relax and spend more fellowship time to get to know ladies I had never met. It was awesome. Then I had another lady say, this was my first time at a women's retreat. I liked the way the lessons were focused on everyday life, and it was great to meet others of like mind. And then another one said, the discussions about Ruth and Naomi helped me to relate to them personally with the things I've gone through, and it inspired me to share my experiences with others. In return, I felt the love and encouragement from others. Mm-hmm. So my last question, or the middle question, which I was a little concerned. I felt so amazing at the end of that retreat. I don't know how I could have poured myself out into this evaluation, but what's one thing you suggest we do differently at our next retreat? That was the question. I mean, I know it's kind of a soft negative, but here's what one person wrote. Have a time to introduce everyone. There were people here that I didn't meet at all. Now, we had 23 in total, and so I can see where that would have happened. We had kind of a short time together. The biggest answer, I mean, like almost everyone wrote this, have everyone staying closer together. We had a couple of houses and they were a couple miles away from each other. And then one person just wrote everything was awesome. But I also got a note that I wanted to share because it said, thank you for all your work, all the work you put into this and for making relationships between women a priority. That was like the most encouraging thing to me.
Wonderful.
And that was not even part of the questions, but I wanted to share that with everyone. So ladies out there, if you missed it, I'm sorry. I wish it had been there. But if you have time next year, this whole treat to me was just saturated with love and caring and lots of sharing. And that it was between the women of faith. And I'm sure that we're going to continue this venture next year. So keep your heads up for the date, and I hope to see you then. Now, I want to just let you see some of the pictures, and I'm going to just tell you a couple of things about what was going on in these pictures. So Bob's got the pictures up here. Okay. So the top left picture is us holding our bags. Those are the bags of soup. And then others, well, there's me teaching, I think, having a teaching moment there on the right. And then people listening and going through their manuals. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And that was, I think this was worship where we sang songs, because we did have songs. You can go to the next one. Okay, this was in one of our homes. This was actually during our session 6 where we were having prayer time, but this was just after when we were into our ice cream and all sorts of fun stuff. But you can see that my daughter is in this picture in the purple sweater. She's standing up there. We did have 3 teens there, and so that was really amazing, and I think they all had a great time. And this was the karaoke that we did. Holly had this little karaoke mic that you plug into your phone and it plays YouTube videos.
Oh, wow.
It was really neat. I was going to talk to you about that. But yeah, this was inside one of our one of the homes. Okay, and this was at the dining room. This was the dining room station that we had where people were doing their dining room station with all the hot chocolate. You just pick up your hot chocolate. Yeah, as you went, you picked up the hot chocolate. Okay. Oh, this is our taco bar at the restaurant. I see lots of water glasses and some margarita glasses. But that was really fun. We had a delicious dinner at Four Seasons Restaurant together, and I mean everyone was just, it was hard to figure out who you want to sit by because everybody wanted to talk to everyone. Okay. And this is our bean soup mix. This is the actual mix. All the things that were contained. We had a bean bag, we had a spice bag, then we put it all inside the bag on the right with the little direction card there, and our bouillon to flavor it, the beef bouillon. Okay, I'm taking up all the time here, I'm so sorry. Okay, and then this is us just learning. Oh no, we were doing our bean soup thing. Yes, I know, but I think we better stop there because we are really running low on time. But it was
very interesting.
It was so fun though, and I hate to take up so much time, but it was so amazing, and I just want you to be there next year. I want everyone to come.
Well,
again.
hopefully that's a good ad.
I'm so sorry. Yes, ladies.
So and they can send an email to you, right?
Yes, send me an email at bosslisa@cgi.org.
Let me know that you're interested, where you would like to have it next year,
yes,
or what time.
Timing. Right now, I'm actually going to Galveston next week on a school trip. So I'm actually going to go and visit a couple of large houses there that I'm already looking at to get for by the seaside.
All right.
Another retreat that I'm looking at.
By the seaside. Oh, that sounds, y'all get ready for that.
The beach, y'all. Beach.
All right. Well, we're going to take another short break, and we get back. What do you got for us, Kelly? You're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about Paul and the Sabbath.
Paul and the Sabbath.
We're going to go through, there seems to be a misconception that Paul was a guy who came along and tried to change the Sabbath or tell us it's no longer necessary. We're going to go through Paul's life and his writings, and we're going to show how that's just simply not true. How Paul is a pro-Sabbath keeper, that he kept the Sabbath himself, and none of his writings contradict the Sabbath. So that's what we'll be going over.
All right, wonderful.
Awesome.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll get into it.
I know.
Awesome.
All right.
Hi, we'd like to offer you 2 booklets on today's program. We want to offer you, Is Jesus Really God? There's a lot of controversy about who and what Jesus was. We also want to offer you, what is God? Of all the theological questions that evoke controversy in the ancient church, the question of who and what God was one of the major questions. It's even a major question today. You can order by visiting our website, www.cgi.org. That's www.cgi.org.
Thanks for joining us here on Bring On the Sabbath. And at this time, we'd like to bring a very special presentation called Paul and the Sabbath. And we have some slides for this presentation that we'd like to bring to you this evening. There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about the Apostle Paul. For some reason, people use his writings to say that the Sabbath was changed or done away with, or that he contradicted the Sabbath. First of all, we have to understand there's only one person who ever lived perfectly on planet Earth, and his name is Jesus Christ, okay? So we have to ask ourselves, why would anyone ever insinuate that the Apostle Paul would contradict Jesus' perfect example? In fact, here's what Paul said about Jesus as it relates to his ministry and his life. In 1 Corinthians 11:1, Paul said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." And that could also be translated, "Copy me as I copy Christ."
You can't get any simpler than that, can you?
It's pretty straightforward there. So Paul is in no way saying, hey, follow me because I'm starting my own thing. He's not trying to start a new religion or tell people that Christ was wrong. I mean, heaven forbid we insinuate the only perfect person to ever live was wrong. No, Paul only pointed people to Christ. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into 3 things that have to do with the Apostle Paul. Number 1, we're going to talk about what the Apostle Peter said about Paul. Why is that important? Whenever we look at the validity of historical evidence, we look at primary sources. Primary sources are people who are contemporary to the time period that we are studying. And so Peter was a contemporary of Paul. They knew each other. So someone is going to help validate what Paul really believed. It would be the Apostle Peter. We're also going to look at Paul's example and some of Paul's writings. But let's get to the very first scripture reference that we have, which is 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 15 through 16. 2 Peter 3, 15 through 16, and we have slides for this. "And consider that the long-suffering of our Lord is salvation, as also our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given him, has written to you, as also in his epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to understand, which untaught and unstable people twist to their own destruction, as they do also the rest of the Scriptures." Now, this is a fascinating series of verses here. The reason why is because Peter instructs us that sometimes Paul writes things that are hard to understand. You got to remember, Peter was a fisherman. Paul was a scholar. Paul was so learned that one of the rulers in the ancient world said, "You're going crazy because you've learned so much." He sat under Gamaliel, who was very much revered in ancient Judaism. And so we have to understand that, again, number 1, some things Paul says are hard to understand. But number 2, there's a warning Peter gives us. He says that some people twist Paul's letters, but that they also twist the other scriptures or the rest of the scriptures. Now, what are the rest of the scriptures? That's a reference to the Old Testament. So here's the key. When we interpret the letters of Paul, we want to be careful that our interpretation does not contradict the Old Testament.
Right.
Okay? And that it doesn't contradict the perfect example of Jesus Christ. So whatever Paul writes in his letters, it's going to line up with the Old Testament. So now let's transition to the second item we want to look at, and that's the example of Paul. And we'll start with the next scripture reference, which is Acts chapter 13. We're going to start with verses 13 and 14. Now, when Paul and his party set sail from Paphos, they came to Perga and Pamphylia, and John, departing from them, returned to Jerusalem. But when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia. Now, stop right there before we go forward. Antioch in Pisidia, where is that? Okay, Antioch in Pisidia is in a region called Galatia in the ancient world, which is in what we would call modern-day Turkey or central Turkey. But I want you to notice what happened when they were in Antioch in Pisidia. It says in the rest of the verse, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. So when they went to the region of Galatia, what did they do? They went into the synagogue to keep the Sabbath with other people. And if we go to the next verse, verse 15 in the slides, it says, and after reading the law and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue sent to them, saying, men and brethren, if you have any word of exhortation for the people, say on. So Paul was in the synagogue on Sabbath. They encouraged him to speak. And for about the next 25 verses or so, Paul preaches about the death, the suffering, the resurrection of Jesus. But here's the key for me as it relates to the issue of the Sabbath. What was the response of the people who heard the message? Because we're often told that somehow the resurrection changed the Sabbath or something of this nature. But when people heard the message in the first century, primary sources, they heard about the suffering and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. What was their response? Let's go to Acts 13:42. Let's find out. So when the Jews went out of the synagogue, the Gentiles begged that these words might be preached to them on the next Sabbath. Now keep this in mind.
Not on Sunday?
That's right, not on Sunday, by the way. So yes, two things there are of great importance. Number one, after Paul preaches about the resurrection, let's go back to the verse one more time. What was the Gentile response? The Gentile response was, hey, come back on the next Sabbath and tell me more about this. That is so important. So wait, when the Gentiles heard Paul preach, they never one time thought to themselves, oh, so these Jewish people are wrong. We need to be meeting on Sunday. They never one time thought that. There's no evidence of that. When they heard the message of the resurrection, they automatically knew, oh, well, let's keep learning about this on the Sabbath. In other words, they were encouraged to continue honoring it. So when you hear people saying the resurrection changes the Sabbath, guess what? It's not scriptural. You will not find it anywhere in the New Testament. Not a single New Testament writer ever uses the resurrection as a justification for trying to change or edit the Sabbath. But there are some more examples in the book of Acts, and we do have some of these listed for you. And you can read these on your own. We don't have time to go through all the verses. But Acts chapter 16, verses 11 through 15, Paul is at Philippi. And here's an interesting note about Paul being at Philippi. The church at Philippi did not have a Jewish synagogue. There's a strain of thought out there that says, well, Paul just did that Sabbath thing for the Jews. But when he was at the Philippians, he still honored the Sabbath. There was no Jewish synagogue. The reason why there was no synagogue is Philippi was a city for retired Roman soldiers. Acts 17, 1 through 4, in the city of Thessalonica. Acts 18, 1 through 4, Corinth. Both of those references mention he ministered to Greeks and Jews in the synagogue on Sabbath. So now, we're going to transition into the writings of Paul. And I fully understand that I could take more time and get into some of this, but we're giving you a cursory overview to build up your faith, to encourage you. Now let's keep in mind two things as we move forward. Peter said Paul's going to write some things that might seem hard to understand. Peter said, though, that he's not going to contradict the Old Testament. And then Paul's example showed that when he preached on the Sabbath, nothing he preached ever contradicted the Sabbath. So now let's move on into some of Paul's writings. Let's go to Romans chapter 14, verses 5 and the first part of 6. And this verse, above all others, has been misused over the years. Let me read it. It says, one person esteems one day above another. Another esteems every day alike. Let each be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it to the Lord, and he who does not observe the day, to the Lord he does not observe it. First things first, we have to understand context. One of the worst things we can do in biblical interpretation is take a verse out of context. Take half a verse or a series of verses outside of their multiple contexts. One context being, what does the other parts of the chapter say, or other parts of that book? So let's go on now to the next verse. I want to show you. Let's go to verse 1, because that's the beginning of the chapter. And Romans 14:1 says, receive one who is weak in the faith, but not to disputes over doubtful things. So the whole issue here in Romans 14 is a disputable matter. And this disputable matter, there's people who are weaker in their faith. Are we insinuating, because some people say that Romans 14 has to do with the Sabbath, are we insinuating that Christ was weak in his faith because he kept the Sabbath? Well, no, we never want to insinuate that.
Yeah, wherever does the Bible talk about the Sabbath being in doubt?
Right. God has never, the Sabbath's mentioned, look, it's like 140 to 150 times in the Bible. God's never really been confused about this issue.
Seems pretty clear.
You know, he declares the end from the beginning. In the beginning, he rested, so that Jesus talked about the last days. He said, pray that your flight not take place on Sabbath. God doesn't have arguments with himself, but we don't want to present him in a way that does so either. Now, let's go back to, on the slide, let's go back to Romans 14. I have some words highlighted that I want to point out on Romans 14:5 through 6. I want you to notice at the very start of this verse, it says, one person esteems one day above another. Now, Paul is referring to days that people esteem, not days that God esteems, because days that God esteems have already been set up by him, and people are not greater than God. They are not going to edit, they can't change the word of God just because it doesn't fit their circumstance or whatever the case is. So God has already expressed his view on the Sabbath. So we don't want to put ourselves in a position when we're saying, well, God didn't really know what he was talking about. We don't want to do that. And there's people that unintentionally, they're not intentionally doing that. But I also want you to see in this same verse, I highlighted the word day. It is the Greek word hemera. It refers to the other 6 days of the week. So I want you to understand, Paul is not referring to days that we should consider holy. He is referring to the other 6 days of the week. He is referring to common days. Now, so we're talking about days people think are important. They're common days. Let's get into historical application, because there's at least 12 types of context I've identified to every single verse in the Bible. One of those is historical. Paul, who is writing here? Paul, who's he writing to? The Romans. You have to understand the Romans were very superstitious people. Let me give you some examples. Some Romans believed that, for instance, odd days of a month were unlucky, so they wouldn't leave their home on those days. It's even believed that
very superstitious.
That's very superstitious. It's
like
believed.
half a month.
The Roman historian Suetonius.
Or they're very lazy because they didn't want to go to work.
Right, or they didn't want to go to work. Right,
It's a good excuse, right?
And so they even believed certain days of the week. Did you know that Saturday was considered an unlucky day in the Roman times? Probably.
Wow.
Well, they didn't, I guess if you didn't keep a Sabbath. No, that's true. But I want you to understand that some of this Roman superstition was intermixed with paganism. Let me give you an example. Some Romans believed that on June 1st, you had to eat beans and spelt to honor the goddess Juno. That's interesting. And we know from the story of Julius Caesar, beware of the Ides of March, the Ides of March, it was considered an unlucky time. So what does Paul say about this kind of thing? He says, look, if you consider June 1st a good day to eat beans and spelt, make sure you do that to honor the Lord and not some other deity or some other god or just a superstition. We have some similar weird superstitions in our times. That people say, well, if you break a mirror, you have bad luck for 7 years. That's just a superstition. The Bible says if you honor his commandments, you're blessed in the city, you're blessed in the country. Doesn't matter if you break a mirror or not. How about that?
Right.
So in short, Paul is referring to days that men think are important, common days, common activities, not holy things, not holy time, not things God considers important. And he wants us to refocus ourselves because he's dealing with people that are coming out of paganism. and they haven't shaken off some of the identity that they had in their pagan past and some of their pagan practices. And so Paul is saying, make sure if you honor certain days a certain way, again, we're talking about common days, common time, make sure you do that to honor the Lord and not to honor another deity. Now, the next verse that I want to get to is Colossians chapter 2. Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. This is another verse people use to say the Sabbath's been changed. And here's what the verse says. So let no one judge you in regard to food or in drink, or regarding a festival or new moon Sabbaths, which are a shadow of things to come, but the substance is of Christ. First of all, I want you to realize we have to read this verse very carefully, very closely. He says, do not let anyone judge you regarding. Okay, now the Greek phrase that is translated as regarding is en meros. In, the Greek word en, we would transliterate it with en. It means to be inside of something. Meros means your share or participation in something. So you see, people were judging the Colossians for celebrating the Sabbath and the holy days and the new moon. Because see, let me just say this too. There are some people who use this verse to say, see, I can keep any day as a Sabbath I want, or any holy day, any day as a holy day I want. But let me just say this. That's not what he's saying. That is a moral relativist view that we cannot apply to the Bible. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through some other Bible verses, and we are actually going to build a context, because I want you to understand, by the time Paul writes Colossians, the Old Testament's already been written. Paul was an expert in the Old Testament, so when he talks about these things, he talks from a place of expertise, not from a place of ignorance. So let's go to 1 Corinthians 23:31. We're going to go through 3 verses pretty quickly, actually. 1 Chronicles 23:31. And we see in this verse, it says, and at every presentation of a burnt offering to the Lord on the Sabbaths, the new moons, and on the set feasts. Now, set feasts there refers to the festivals of Leviticus 23. Let's go to Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 33. For the showbread, for the regular grain offering, for the regular burnt offering of the Sabbaths, new moons, and set feasts. Let's go to Ezekiel 45, verse 17. This shall be the prince's part to give burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offerings at the feasts, the new moons, the Sabbaths, and in all the appointed seasons of the house of Israel. So I want you to understand that by the time the Apostle Paul uses these 3 words together in a sentence, or in this kind of context, there is actually already, these 3 terms have already been used together in context in the Old Testament multiple times. I just gave you 3 examples. I could have probably given you twice that many. So by the time Paul uses these 3 words, they already have a specific meaning attached to them. So that means that if we're going to correctly interpret the Bible, we cannot impose a meaning on the text just because it does, the real meaning interferes with our existing doctrine. Let me just tell you this. The Greek word translated as festival here is heorte. Its only use in the entire New Testament is for the festivals of Leviticus 23. The new moon, as the Greek word pneumonia, refers to the new moon celebrations. And then Sabbath, it is sabbaton. It refers to the weekly Sabbath. Now, to conclude this section on Colossians, I want to help you understand why Paul had to say this. Why does Paul have to say, let no one judge you for keeping the Sabbath, for keeping? Now in verse 17, he makes it very very clear that the purpose of the Sabbath and the holy days, the new moon, that the substance of these things is in Christ. Now, the Greek word there translated as substance is soma, and that Greek word means body. The body is of Christ. So these things, the Sabbath and the holy days, they belong to the body of Christ. But let me still address them. Let's go to Colossians 2:20 verses 21. So why did he have to say this? The Colossians were infiltrated by a teaching called asceticism. It taught that anything enjoyable in life was a sin. So let's read Colossians 2:20-21. It says this, therefore, if you died with Christ from the basic principles of the world, why, as though living in the world, do you subject yourselves to regulations? Do not touch, do not taste, do not handle, which all concern things which perish with using. Now we're in verse 22 here. which concern things which perish with using, according to the commandments and the doctrines of men. Okay, so asceticism is a commandment and doctrine of men. Verse 23, these things indeed have an appearance of wisdom and self-imposed religion, false humility and neglect of the body, but are of no value against the restraining of the indulgence of the flesh. So I want you to understand that these ascetic teachers, they were teaching that if you do anything enjoyable in life, it is a sin. You have to understand, where does this asceticism come from?
This kind of reminds me, I guess, of asceticism. There's like examples of teachers in like India. They'll grow their fingernails out like for 4 feet long, and they'll sit there like, all day long because they feel there's some kind of wisdom or great things in those type of things, and they're bend their body. So it's a very pagan custom.
100%.
Yeah, and what you're saying is,
the context.
Yeah, it's very much the context, and so something very similar is what it seems is being applied there.
That's right. See, in the Gentile world, atonement was achieved through self-mutilation and self-affliction. That's why in some cultures they walk over hot coals or a board of nails, or some of the old-time Catholic priests used to beat themselves with this whip. This comes from a Gentile mindset. And so the Sabbath and the holy days are the most celebratory times of the year, and the ascetic teachers were rebuking them. And Paul's saying, no. Don't let anybody judge you for celebrating the holy days. They're about Christ. So that's the meaning of Colossians 2. So don't let anybody judge you for keeping the Sabbath, not the opposite.
For having a good time.
For having a good time, right.
That's what it's about.
They would see somebody eating like ice cream, and just give you a modern example, eating ice cream on the Sabbath and rebuke you and say, you sinner, that would be sort of a modern correlation.
Unless the only time that would be a Day of Atonement. You could rebuke
on the Day of Atonement.
Rebuke somebody for eating ice cream.
On the Day of Atonement, it's a fast day.
But everything else applies, yeah.
And exactly, everything else we talked about applies, but Atonement is the fast day. The last set of verses, and we'll go through this a little bit faster here, is Galatians 4, 8 through 11. We're going to read that, and I don't really have, this one's pretty easy to summarize here. Galatians 4, 8 through 11. But then indeed, when you did not know God, you served those which by nature are not gods. But now after you have known God, or rather are known by God, how is it that you turn again to the weak and beggarly elements, to which you desire again to be in bondage? You observe days and months and seasons and years. I'm afraid for you, lest I have labored for you in vain. So there are people out there who say these verses are referring to the Sabbath or the holy days. And we have to start by identifying who Galatians is written to. The book of Galatians is primarily written to Gentiles. There's 2 proofs of this, well, multiple actually, but the first is, one of the issues in the Galatian church is whether or not circumcision was a necessary requirement for salvation or to be a Christian. And if Paul was talking to Jewish people, they would already be circumcised, okay? Because the misconception is that Paul's writing Galatians to correct Jewish people who've gone, quote unquote, gone back to keeping the Sabbath and the holy days, and that's not what he's referring to here in Galatians. But number 2, it's in the book of Galatians chapter 1 that Paul identifies himself as an apostle to the Gentiles. So, what is Paul really saying here? If we go to verse 8, it's very plain. He is talking about, if we could pull that verse up one more time, he is talking about a time when they did not know God and they worshiped other gods.
Oh.
Okay, so what are we insinuating if we say this is referring to the Sabbath, that the one true God of the Bible gave the Sabbath, and if we keep it, we're honoring other gods? That makes absolutely no logical sense.
You're trying to say that the Sabbath is weak and beggarly.
So Jesus was weak and beggarly and went into bondage. Again, this is very inconsistent interpretation.
It's blasphemous in a way if you interpret it
that way. It really
is that way.
It's very dangerous to interpret it that way.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example from history. There was a bishop with the Catholic Church. His name was Boniface. In about 742, 743 AD, he wrote to Pope Zachary in Rome, who was observing the January New Year's, and he rebuked him using Galatians chapter 4. So the reason why is because Boniface knew that the Roman New Year's was a pagan celebration, and he properly used Galatians chapter 4. So understand that Galatians 4, 8 through 11, this has to do with people going back to pagan practices they celebrated before coming to Christ. And so when we look at Peter's example, we look at Paul's example, we look at the letters of Paul, we can see that Paul in no way ever contradicted the Sabbath in his writings, and in his example he showed that he indeed was a Sabbath keeper.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt from that right there. That is clear evidence.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Evidence of that. I have one person was where you were saying this, made a comment. It's an interesting comment, something to think about. And she says, I guess it's Siska, and that's she says there are rabbis and teachers that teach that the Shabbat and the Sabbath is only for the people of Israel to observe and keep.
Sure.
Confusing. They actually teach that. So what is your take on that?
So this I love. Thank you for saying that. I'm so glad we get to address this question. Here's the answer to that. Number one, you have to realize that the rabbis and the Jewish people don't have the New Testament. And when we read the New Testament, it's very clear. If you'll read Romans chapters 9 through 11, and especially Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11 through 22, that when we become Christians, by the blood of Jesus, we are grafted into Israel. And Paul says we are fellow citizens and sharers in the covenants. And, one of the covenants, part of the covenant is keeping the Sabbath. And so that's the answer is, well, we're Israelites by the blood of the Messiah, which is prophesied in the book of Isaiah chapter 53.
So technically they're not wrong. They
Right.
just don't understand that people can be grafted into Israel.
They don't have the revelation of the Messiah.
Yeah. Very, very good. Very good.
Thank you for asking
there.
that. That's a great question.
And I guess another person was talking. There's a little chat here that sometimes it's hard to try to teach others or friends. He says, my husband and I have been trying to show a friend of ours the Sabbath truth and importance of it for some time now, without any luck. And so, any suggestions to help out? Someone you're trying to share something. I know first thing we do know is that God calls certain people and He opens people's minds to the truth. But if there's a way, what would be your approach to try to teach someone the Sabbath day?
Sure. If you wanted to teach someone the Sabbath, I'd like to know if they're actually already call themselves a Christian. That would be a detail that I think would be important. Because if you're dealing with someone who at least would accept the Bible as the source of morality in their life, and they call themselves a Christians, you would start with the example of Jesus. And Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man. He did not say the Sabbath was made for Israel or Jews. He said the Sabbath was made for man. That includes every human who's ever been made. Now, why would he make that statement? It's very simple logic. God rested on the seventh day. God made man in the image of God. So mankind was created in the image of God. Therefore, man was created to rest on the seventh day because we're made in His image, and He rested on the seventh day. It's very simple logic there. Every human alive was made with the innate need to rest on the seventh day of the week, and help them understand the benefits of honoring Sabbath. I think sometimes as Sabbath keepers, and I know I've been guilty of this at times in the past, we get caught up in we are excited about this truth, and we want people to keep it because it has benefited us, but I think we need to lay out those benefits to them.
I think one thing you mentioned about it being a benefit is that Satan has, through a lot of people who oppose God's law, has spread the lie that the Sabbath is a burden.
That's right.
And so it's like that's like fake news. So
Fake
everybody
news.
gets this propaganda in their mind. Oh, these people who are keeping the Sabbath, they're trying to earn their salvation by keeping that terrible thing called the Sabbath. It's so hard to keep the Sabbath day. And the thing is, the Sabbath day is the commandment where you're told to
not do something.
To not do something. So and again, so I'm not doing anything. So how am I earning anything? I'm actually receiving benefit from my relationship with Christ. And again, as Sabbath keepers, man, it changes your life and how you can experience that in your life.
I agree, and I'll add to that. If you read Acts chapter 13, verses 42, read on through verse 44, what you'll find in there is Paul urges them to continue in the grace of God, and then they meet on the next Sabbath. You see, the Sabbath is the perfect picture of grace, because we cannot earn our salvation by works. And in the same way, we do not work on the Sabbath. Christ is Lord of the Sabbath. Christ is, through the Sabbath, teaching us about grace. I have learned so much more about grace keeping the Sabbath.
Yeah, and that's the false teaching is that they take the Sabbath and tell you exactly what it's not. And that's what's spread among the ones who try to criticize Sabbath keeping. We're trying to tell you the Sabbath is all about grace. It's all about grace in your life. It's all about what God gives us. and that we can experience, and you can experience His grace fully by keeping the Sabbath day.
And earlier, actually, Skip wrote that Paul taught that salvation is only through faith in Jesus Christ. And however, he was very clear that someone who has faith in Christ will observe the law.
That's true. That's absolutely true. It's about a frame of reference. We're not earning our salvation, but once we receive the salvation, there is this, by the Holy Spirit, we are led to honor the commandments of God, and we honor the commandments out of the thankfulness of the salvation that we have.
Yeah, I like to use the words, it's our response to our salvation.
It's a response.
When you respond to salvation, your response to salvation is obedience to Christ and putting Him first in your life. And also where he said, you know, it's made for man, he also said he was Lord of the Sabbath.
It's the only day of the week, the only day of the week Jesus is Lord of.
Yeah.
And people don't like that when you tell them that. But here's the key. There's a difference between time and matter. And God gave mankind dominion over matter, but He did not give us dominion over time. And time is in God's hands. And the Sabbath, there is a special blessing in the Sabbath that is not found in any other day of the week. There is literally, because God tells us to rest, there is a blessing that comes from rest that literally we can't get by resting any other day of the week because of God's nature. He literally would be contradicting himself if he did the same thing any other day of the week when He promised to do it a specific day of the week.
Yeah. And I guess the Bible Sabbath Association, why was it established? For these kind of purposes?
Absolutely.
To kind of share this with folks?
The Bible Sabbath Association was founded in 1945 to help promote fellowship between Sabbath keepers, but also to provide resources, because not every Sabbath keeper out there is connected to people like the Church of God International, which is a great organization and has great resources available like the app and things that you've seen. There's a lot of scattered Sabbatarians. And so we want to offer resources to the Sabbath community and send speakers out to help encourage people in different groups. And so, there's many different kinds of Sabbath keeping groups out there in the BSA. We want to serve all of them because we do share the Sabbath, the Ten Commandments, and Jesus as our Savior. And we have a lot of other common beliefs as well.
Very good. Well, we thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for
We're
having
looking
me.
forward-
It's really an honor. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
We're looking very forward to tomorrow also.
It's going to be fun. We're going to have a great time.
So all y'all out there watching, remember, tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. You can watch us on the app, on the Roku, on the Apple TV, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you want to, our website. But please watch us. Please share this. Share this with your friends. Share. That's we're not asking you for money. We're asking you to share things, right? We want you to share.
Jesus said it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath, so it's okay to share.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to take another short break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, we'd like to offer you some free literature and a CD on today's program. We want to offer you the booklet, Immortality, God's Gift to the Saints. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have an immortal soul. You can gain immortality, but it is a gift from God. Get Immortality, God's Gift to the Saints. We also want you to get the full-length sermon CD, Enoch and Elijah by Mike James. Please, to get both these items free of charge, call toll-free 1-888-578-8791. That's 1-888-578-8791. Or you can order by visiting our website, www.cgi.org. That's www.cgi.org.
We want to thank you again for joining us tonight on Bring on the Sabbath. I guess the Sabbath kind of happened as we were doing this. We are now
brought
into
it
the Sabbath.
on.
It's
We were
dark.
bringing it on.
We
In
brought it
Jesus'
on.
name.
We brought it on. We are in the first day of the biblical New Year. We are counting
On the Sabbath.
Yeah, we're getting ready for the Passover coming. So y'all get
This
excited.
is an exciting
2 weeks.
time.
Yeah,
2
get
weeks.
excited for the Passover.
Come on,
get
Jesus.
excited for all this stuff. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kelly, for being here.
Thank you guys for
and
having
for
me.
coming all the
Praise
way
God.
from Tennessee to be here.
So
So
blessed.
thank you, everyone. So everyone have a great night. Have a good night, and may God bless your Sabbath. So goodbye.
Happy Sabbath.
Good night.
Our free material is provided by the generous support of our church members and additional independent donors who believe in our mission of preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the world.